everyone, welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Goins, and today I am joined by the one and only brilliant Cinco Paul. He's the co-creator, showrunner of Apple TV Plus's Schmicago, season 2 of Schmigadoon. Cinco, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat with you about season 2 of Schmigadoon because, I loved season 1. It was fantastic in that golden age. And then season 2, I'm like, I loved season 1. I love season 2. This was so much fun to go into this darker 60s and 70s inspired world of Schmicago. And I've seen a lot of, just from the episodes that have released during our interview here, a lot of people have had the same sort of feeling of like, I really enjoyed season 1, season 2, we're on a whole new level. So I'm curious for you, in the creative process, was there ever a point where you were like, okay, yeah, now we're cranking it up here in season 2, or was it just even keeled from season 1 all the way through to season 2?
No, I have to confess that initially I was really intimidated by, the success of season 1 and I had these moments where I thought, like, can I even do a season 2? Is this going to be any good? You go to those dark places, ironically, because I was going to a darker
Schmicago,
world in
essentially.
season. Yeah, Schmicago got into my head and was saying like, "Oh, can I even write a song anymore?" It was those sort of feelings, and then sort of about halfway through the process, I started to feel like, oh, but this is so different from the first one.
Right.
Sort of the pressure came off. And then I started to think like, and I started to really have fun writing the songs and then picturing this cast singing them. And then I thought like, oh, I think we may blow people's minds a little bit with this season. So
Yeah, you
it got to
absolutely
that
did.
place, which was very fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely worked. We're back with these characters, not the characters necessarily, but the cast. We've got Josh and Melissa back as the two leads here, but everybody else is very much same actor, new role, just like a theatrical production. But I'm curious for you as during the creative process, was there ever a version of season 2 in which, Josh and Melissa are no longer here? Everybody's coming back as a all new character, or was it always Keegan and Cecily? They're coming back and playing the same two in this world.
Yeah, it was always them.
Okay.
I first of all, I love Keegan and Cecily so much. I want to, work with them forever. But also, yeah, it was from the very beginning, it was we're gonna see what's the next step for Josh and Melissa, right?
Right.
What next do they have to learn? And then when I dove into these darker musicals, I started to think about happiness as a theme,
Hmm.
right? And I thought like, okay, they're fine as a couple, and you can be fine as a couple, but still not individually finding happiness, feeling
Right.
kind of joyless. And so that became the path for season 2.
It's so fun to, behind all of the glitz and the glam of these big musical numbers and the jokes, that there is still very much this very real, heavy topic of what does it mean to truly be happy? How am I finding fulfillment in my life? And I think that this show does such a great job of, balancing the levity of showbiz, of musical theater, with something that is more profound like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the goal. I feel like I'm always trying to remake It's a Wonderful Life in some way through everything that I do. And I just love like that's a lighthearted movie in a lot of ways, but it gets dark too, and it
Yeah,
deals with some
absolutely.
really profound issues. And so I think that was important to me, but also to Cecily and Keegan and everybody, that like, oh, this season it's about something, and
Yeah,
it's about like, the world we live in doesn't have happy endings. So how do you find happiness in that world? How do you find joy in a world where there's just pain and trauma and tragedy all around you, and it's especially pertinent to these musicals because they didn't have happy endings, or
yeah.
everyone's suffering and unhappy and trying to find some fulfillment, and most of them don't get it in these decades of musicals. So very interesting to explore that.
It's because they didn't have a Josh and Melissa to guide them to a happy ending. But we do have that.
Exactly. Yeah.
We do have
Yeah, it
that
was
in
it's I think
Chicago. Oh, go ahead.
it's the
Sorry.
yeah, it's the instinct in me like wishing that Sweeney Todd had a happy ending. I think that like bleeds into this season.
If only. But you know, we've
Yeah.
mentioned some of them, Sweeney Todd being one of them. There's a lot of big musical influences here from this era. And for me as a viewer, like I was way more familiar with this era rather than the golden age musicals. And I'm curious if it's just because of my familiarity or if it was part of the song making of this and the plot. But it feels like there's a lot more where Schmigadoon was, you know, in the spirit of this golden age, that there's a lot more of like a one-to-one sort of like, oh, this is meant to be this song from this musical. I feel like there's a lot more direct connections here. Would you say that's accurate, or is it just the awareness?
Yeah, for sure. Because, season one was almost all Rodgers and Hammerstein with a little bit of Music Man and,
Mhm.
rubbed in there. So it's a much wider target, right? So it's easier to encapsulate the whole thing. Although we did some very specific things. We did a very specific Do Re Mi, a very
Yeah.
specific You Got Trouble. Um, but the targets are smaller because the musical theater exploded and you had all these incredibly different sounds, right? You had the pop rock stuff of Stephen Schwartz and Andrew Lloyd Webber, and then Stephen
Mhm.
Sondheim is doing his thing, which is so specific, and Kander and Ebb, harkening back to jazz and ragtime. So yeah, I think there's a lot more what you'd call one-to-one, or at least mashing up two very specific songs into
Yeah.
one.
And I know there's so many of the ones that like actually do make it into a song inspired by this musical, but there's so many extras that are still I feel like you were out here writing these songs and you probably had a list of 30 other songs that didn't make the cut because there are so many options. And it's like we don't have time for a full Bye Bye Birdie musical number, but we're gonna have Conrad in jail. We're gonna have Danny Zuko in the lyrics of Let's Get Naked. How did you reel yourself in and manage like, okay, we've got to keep it to these instead of just like running wild? How did you make the cuts?
Yeah, it was finding the ones that most encapsulate this era, right? The darkness and the grittiness of it. So it was clear as Cabaret Chicago, Pippin, and Sweeney, I think were at the heart of
Mhm.
of everything. And then it's like, but no, but Grease was huge. How does Grease fit into this? Oh, I'll do a little Grease joke in when we're in the
Right.
hair world. And so it was finding little ways to give nods to other shows, but really, like, I sort of, if there's a map of Schmicago, 1/3 of the map is Chicago and your classic American city.
Mhm.
1/3 is a hippie commune, and 1/3 is Victorian England.
Yeah.
So it was like those three worlds were the main worlds we were playing in. But then every once in a while you get to do a little chorus line, you get to do a little promises, promises, you get to mix it up here and there.
Yeah, it's funny to hear it split into those like very defined sections because it all melts together so perfectly. But it's the same thing with the characters too, that you know, some of the characters are a Dooley Blight is very clear. That is Sweeney Todd, like as the inspiration, but then you've got a Topher who's got, you know, a little Pippin in him, a little Jesus, a little Claude. Like there are so many different things. So when you're creating like who's going to be playing who, were there certain characters like a Sweeney Todd where you're like, we can only have him be Sweeney Todd and there's no other inspiration? Or how did you, what was the priority ranking of characters and who could be blended, who had to stand alone?
Yeah, I mean, it was really like looking at the main characters from all these musicals and then seeing which ones lined up. There's
Mhm.
no one like Sweeney in any other show. So it's like he is Sweeney, but Sally Bowles is kind of like Charity Hope Valentine, and she's also kind of like Roxy Hart. And and then she lines up with Joanna from Sweeney Todd,
Mhm.
so that was part of the fun initially, and this was very early on in the process, was making all those connections and
Yeah.
saying like, okay, Dove can play like an amalgamation of four characters, and Aaron's going to play three characters, all meshed into one, and Kristen gets to be Mrs. Lovett and Miss Hannigan from
Yeah.
Annie, and looking to see like where those could happen was part of the fun. And then it's like I have the dream cast, and then just being to say like, ooh, you get to be this and you get to be this, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, you know, we've hit the golden age, we've hit this era with Chicago now, and the fun thing is in season one, you know, we had Jane Krakowski very limited, but she came in and was sort of like a look ahead to what's next. And then in this, we end with a very Phantom of the Opera-esque chandelier fall. Is that a little
Yeah,
foreshadowing at where Schmigadoon could be going in a future season?
it just might be. It just might be. Yeah. Yeah.
Is
It's always fun to do that. Just sort of at the end of the final episode, there's always a little hint at like, if, you know, Apple
fingers crossed?
willing,
Yeah.
we get to keep going where we might go.
I love that. And you know, we've gone sequential so far. You know, the timeline is going forward, but who's to say you could skip a decade, go back even further. I don't know. There's a lot to unfold here, but I'm excited to see what's next. And you know, my final question here as we wrap up is not Schmicago, not Schmigadoon, but this show has brought Broadway to Apple TV Plus. And so I'm curious if we're doing the opposite, if we're bringing Apple TV Plus to Broadway, what show do you think has the best potential to be adapted into a Broadway musical? You've got your Ted Lassos, your morning shows, your Severances. Is there one that you think has the prime ability to be adapted?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, apart from our own show.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
but I'd say, like, yeah, Ted Lasso 100% has the spirit of it, the larger than life characters, the romance, right? I mean, it's to me like Ted Lasso the musical,
It writes
no
itself.
brainer. Jason Sudeikis, Bill Lawrence, like give me a call
Yeah, well,
if you want to turn into a musical. I'm here.
I'm sure somebody at Apple can put you two together and make it work because I know they always drop the musical Easter eggs. They have references to different shows, so it's
Yeah,
bound to
Ted
happen.
loves musicals, clearly. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Cinco, thank you so much for stopping by. I really enjoyed the chat. I enjoyed season 2 of Schmigadoon, and I'm excited to see what's next throughout awards season, a potential future of season 3. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Ah, thank you, Zach. Really appreciate it.